Adam, it's good to have you here at the LSI conference.
Thanks so much for having me on this.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it, Joe.
You've had an eventful, well, last couple of years, but the last few months. Take us through this incredibly successful run.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, we're so excited to be partnering with D8 Holdings and the team there. They have so much background and expertise, and between public markets, robotics, medical devices, and also, frankly, when we look toward expansion into the Asian markets for our device, they're going to be incredibly important with their connections.
So unwind what happened. So we're in a SPAC.
Yep.
Right. We had this unbelievably great technology with Vicarious, and if you could, for the audience, share what Vicarious is focusing on. And then you got pulled into this SPAC, and now the valuations, the opportunity, the free cash flow to take the organization where you've always had the vision.
Yeah, exactly. So what, I think it makes sense before we even dive into what we're doing to talk a little bit about some of the background that led us to where we are today, right? This is something that you obviously know, and I think most people probably know, but it's, surgery started with open surgery. You make this huge incision in the patient, literally open up the patient, and you can operate with your own hands, you see with your own eyes, but unfortunately, most of the injury to the patient actually comes from that incision, not from the procedure done on the organs inside of the body. So that's what minimally invasive surgery was all about, the first generation of surgical robotics, the idea that you can essentially make 3 to 5 small incisions and pivot across the abdominal wall to perform procedures. But it really transfers a lot of the complications from the patient to the surgeon and to the hospital, because all of a sudden they have to design a robot for every procedure. And that is always fundamentally going to be true anytime you have multi-incision surgical robots. Anytime that you're pivoting about the abdominal wall to generate the motion, the robotics kinematics, the motion profile, will depend on where the surgeon puts those incisions and where they want to operate. So there have also been some single port attempts to help resolve some of this, the idea that if you put everything through one incision, you get past the abdominal wall. And it's a great idea, and one that we leverage, but at the same time, everything in single port robotics to date has been built on flexible robotic technology. They're both too big in that the incision sizes are 25 millimeters and greater, and they're too small in that inside the body they have a tiny little operating area, very low force capability, and very limited motion. So we really spent, I mean, you've been working with us for a long time. We've spent the last 7 years just redefining and reinventing the way the robotic actuators work, so that the motion is what we call decoupled, that there's no connection between each of the joints. And that's really what enables us to put 9 degrees of freedom inside the abdomen, the surgeon's wrists, elbows, and shoulders, so that they're not stuck operating in a tiny little area forward, but they can literally turn right, turn to the left, reach up, down, and they can actually even have beyond what I can do. They can reach all the way back and work around the incision site. So it's a really incredible step forward. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
But there's no, it wasn't. It was instructional, and it allows our viewers to get an idea of what you're doing. Now, there's more to than just that 9 degrees of freedom as well, right? Isn't there an imaging component to this?
Oh yeah, so absolutely. So part of the beauty of what we're doing is we don't just recreate the surgeon's torso, but we also recreate their head inside the body. So we have 2 cameras that are placed at a natural distance apart, creating a really powerful, good, immersive 3D view. And then we have 3 degrees of freedom. We actually let the surgeon, they can look left and right, up and down. They can even roll their head side to side during the procedure. They can see anywhere in the abdomen. So that plus the robotic capability together, let the surgeon make one 15-millimeter incision, insert all of this through that one incision, and then they can operate anywhere in the abdomen, facing in any direction from any incision site. It's really an incredible difference.
And so soft tissue robot, I believe, is the hardest robot to get through to the market, right?
I agree.
We've got tons of ortho robots. It's a different solution set. when you start to get involved in soft tissue robotics, it's a very complex area. So have you solved some big problems there?
Yeah, so that's really what those decoupled actuators come down to. So with legacy surgical robots, they have just a wrist on the end of a stick. And with that wrist, with the coupling that they have, every joint that you move moves every other joint. So then they use complex software techniques in order to resolve that, and they have solved it in software, but it doesn't prevent this exponential buildup of force joint by joint as you go throughout the arm, nearly a doubling of force on the control cables. That's why with only a wrist on the end of a stick, they end up needing 1 millimeter diameter control cables to drive their arms. We've fully decoupled that motion. It enables us to have 9 degrees of freedom per arm, but not just that, we're actually using 0.5 millimeter diameter slippery polymer cables so that we can then get rid of all the pulleys, so that we can then move toward polymer parts. We lower the cost significantly. I mean, the benefits of this are really cascading.
And would you be able to give us some guidance as to when we move into regulatory pathways, clinical pathways, and maybe even our first in human type scenario? Would you be able to share that?
Yeah, so our first in human will actually be once we are cleared through the regulatory pathway. So we'll be filing for 510(k) clearance in later 2023. Most of the next 2.5 years are about finalizing the design, really the kind of the rough edges around our product, getting it out through the FDA clearance pathway. We have breakthrough designation from the FDA.
And
So-
for our viewers, breakthrough designation puts you on a more clear path and a less onerous, but still the overview. It doesn't lessen the overview, but it clears out some of the obstacles in the way.
Yeah, more than anything, it provides support from FDA senior leadership. Essentially, it means that the FDA has reviewed what we're doing in detail and determined that they believe that based on the fundamentals of the technology, that we'll have a clinical benefit where nobody else has succeeded. So because of that, they're willing to work closely with us to really help us get through the pathway to make sure our device is safe and effective and get it to market as quickly as possible. And they also provide a number of reimbursement benefits as well once we're on market.
Once you're on market, yeah. And we hear a lot about footprints, right? Smaller footprint, bigger footprint, 6-arm robots on a bed, our OR is that big. Any competitive advantage to your platform in regards to moving it in, moving it out, storing it, getting it through a door?
That's, I think you hit one of the biggest advantages of all, right? It's because we have so much motion inside of the body, so much capability inside of the patient, we no longer need these huge machines outside of the patient. So essentially, we go from the legacy surgical systems that are 4 gigantic industrial robotic arms that are incredibly expensive, difficult to move, difficult to set up. We go down to one primarily non-robotic support system that holds this from the outside, plus a surgeon workstation like the console like legacy systems have as well. And the advantage of that is it fits through a normal door, can move from OR to OR, can even get into ambulatory surgical centers because of a combination of the lower cost basis that comes from getting rid of those giant industrial robotic arms, combined with the portability and mobility of the system.
And so the partner you have now, you mentioned distribution network, the ability, certainly the Asian market is enormous in opportunity as well as sort of patient population. Share a little bit about that. What are you looking forward to over the next 24, 36 months with that relationship?
Yeah, so I think the next few years are really about setting us up, getting us through that regulatory pathway, helping look at ways that we can accelerate the pathway in Asia as well, and set up those partnerships and distribution channels in Asia. And then outward from there, after our initial US launch, we'll be looking to our partners at D8 to really help build out those channels. And they've already made some amazing connections, help us drive some of the strategy that'll be able to start moving some of those timelines to the left in ways that we're really excited about.
You had mentioned earlier you've been involved in this for 7+ years. What is the one thing today that you know that you wish you would have known earlier in that 7-year journey? Can you think of anything?
One thing. I mean, there are a lot of lessons learned here. I think conviction is very important. I'll say one of the biggest though is what we were talking about, half an hour ago, which was the idea that you really, as we grow, we're over 100 people now and growing rapidly. It becomes increasingly important to just hire incredible people and lean on them, right? Focus on enabling them, providing them the resources that they need, and stay out of their way to some degree, right? You provide the guidance, the vision, the direction for the company, and the resources that they need. And that's part of why I'm so personally proud of the transaction that we have. We'll be able to put over $400 million on our balance sheet, and really have all the resources that we need all the way through clearance and commercialization.
Yeah, I love the fact that, as contextually, as one of the younger, certainly powerfully emerging CEOs in the health tech, med tech world, to gain that wisdom early enough in your career really pays dividends. So I'm happy to hear that for you, and it'll help with recruiting too.
I appreciate that. I think I will say we obviously have some good partners in recruiting here, so it's always helpful to have that as well.
Yeah. So you're at LSI. You just raised a substantial amount of money. You got a lot of work ahead of you. What made you come to this conference today?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the answer is the connections, the people that are here, right? It's kind of the same answer for any great conference that's well organized, brings out the right people. I'm really excited for the panel that we're going to have about funding startups, and really proud to get to talk on that as well, along with some other amazing startup CEOs. And excited to get to share the company story further. So.
Yeah, it's one that most weren't aware of until the last 2 years or so. So it's really come to the forefront, and I'm excited for you for the timing on it as well.
Yeah, it's you mean this conference is one that? Yeah, it's a conference that's been very much emerging in its own way, and I'd say everybody seems to be here.
Yeah. Agreed.
Plus, I mean, it's the first big in-person conference. How could I miss that?
That's true. That's true.
So.
Well, I appreciate your time coming out and spending it. I know you're incredibly busy, and sharing the Vicarious story.
Thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate it as well.
Appreciate it. Joe Mullings, LSI Conference. Be well.